Hello, welcome to Behind the Music, where we take an inside look at the music you will hear on North Carolina Symphony programs. My name is Michelle Di Russo, Assistant Conductor of the North Carolina Symphony. This weekend, the Symphony will perform an exciting program of beloved favorites, including Rachmaninoff's Rhapsody on a theme of Paganini with pianist George Lee, and Dvořák's New World Symphony under the direction of David Danzmayr. This program will take us on a journey through some of the best music that classical music has to offer. A lot of it is closely tied and inspired by the Americas. When we think about classical music in America, sometimes we think about Bernstein, we think about Gershwin, but most often we think about Aaron Copland. And for that reason, our first half of the program opens with one of his most known pieces that has defined Americanism in music, Fanfare for the Common Man. Even though it is only a 3-minute piece of music, written only for brass and percussion, it achieves one of Copland's main goals: to draw people back into the concert hall, to develop new audiences, and energize orchestral music. I don't know about you, but I can't think of a better concert opener to bring that energy back into the concert hall than Fanfare for the Common Man. If you think that you haven't heard this piece before, you might be wrong. It is one of the most recognizable pieces of American classical music. And I won't sing it for you right now because I want you to experience it for yourself when our wonderful musicians play it. If you've ever listened to Copland's earlier music, you might have associated the style with a more severe and strict style, but this piece couldn't be more different. He was searching for new ways to engage his audience. He took a more simple approach where he incorporated jazz-inspired rhythms and elements of popular songs. This allowed him to express his ideas and attract new listeners. Nowhere, and I mean nowhere, is this more apparent than in his Fanfare for the Common Man, a work familiar to practically everyone. I would say that his mission here was accomplished. And a fun fact for you, if you really enjoyed Aaron Copland's piece, John Tower has composed a counterpiece called Fanfare for the Uncommon Woman that I would encourage you to listen to. What we have witnessed through time is that through great tragedy, we have had bursts of creativity, and this piece is not an exception. What you may not be aware of is that this piece was commissioned in 1942, specifically because of World War II. The purpose of the piece was to arouse patriotic sentiment in these increasingly dark times. It is an attempt to find light in this darkness through this seemingly unending period. The North Carolina Symphony's mission to bring you this music and to play on is connected in some ways to that era, where the arts could provide refuge and hope during hard times. Considering Copland's efforts to connect with the audience, can you think of a better way to attract new listeners than to dedicate his fanfare to the common man? The title for the piece was inspired by Henry Wallace, Vice President of the United States during Franklin D. Roosevelt's third term, when Wallace named the 20th century the century of the common man. The Fanfare for the Common Man is made of the simplest materials, but Copland's sense of timing in their deployment is masterful. Beginning with an assertive and almost aggressive percussion, the work introduces the familiar theme in the brass. What strikes the listener the most is the confidence that the music transmits and Copland's commitment to bring honor to the common man. Sometimes composers decide to quote themselves or to reuse certain musical materials in other pieces. Copland understood the value of his work and the impact that it had on his audience. Even though the commission came out in the middle of World War II, from the darkest times, he repurposed it as the finale of his third symphony to celebrate the end of the war. The fanfare is now a national treasure. Next, you will listen to a piece by one of the most important and celebrated Black composers of the 20th century, William Grant Still. Still was the first Black man to conduct a major American orchestra, LA Philharmonic Orchestra in 1936, and to have a piece performed by a major American orchestra. His Afro-American Symphony was premiered by the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra in 1931. His music is an example of what can be achieved when you fuse formal academic training and contemporary popular music such as jazz and blues. Still was determined to use his talents to bring African-inspired music into the concert hall and make them a part of the American cultural mainstream. This is also the case with his marvelous Panamanian dances, premiered in 1948. By composing Danzas de Panama, he not only incorporated African-American elements, but as the title Panama suggests, Spanish and native Central American Indian elements as well. This collection of Panamanian folk tunes, gathered by ethnomusicologist Elizabeth Waldo in the 1920s, will be performed by the strings section of our orchestra. Danzas de Panama consists of 4 dances and presents a distinct unity and Caribbean color in each of them. The first and last movement have origins in African music that were probably brought by the first slaves taken to Panama, while the second and third have their inspiration in Spanish Indian music. If you listen carefully, you will be able to notice that in each movement, sometimes there are at least 2 or separate dances within it. The opening movement, called Tamborito, will capture your attention immediately, as Still makes use of the string instruments percussively by striking them on the sides. Tamborito can be translated to little drum, and the dance dates back as early as the 17th century. The second movement, Mejorana y Socavón, evokes the sound effects of folk guitars called mejoraneras and the rabel, a 3-stringed folk fiddle. The third dance, Punto, will reference to 2 dances, Zapateo, shoe tapping, and the Paseo promenade. And finally, Cumbia y Congo will feature a fusion of African and Latin influences in a sensuous dance where women hold lighted candles while the men swirl around them. Still brings back the percussive elements for this vibrating finale to celebrate the end of this impressive piece. The rest of the program will feature 2 composers that found inspiration while living in the United States. The first piece we will perform is Sergei Rachmaninoff's Rhapsody on a theme of Paganini, composed in 1934. Rachmaninoff was then in the United States after being forced to flee due to the Russian Revolution at the age of 44 and had to start his career all over again in America. Of course, this was not an easy decision, and in order to support his family, he decided to become a touring piano virtuoso. And you're probably wondering how a piano virtuoso like Rachmaninoff might be connected with a violin virtuoso such as Paganini. Well, actually, Rachmaninoff was not the only admirer of Paganini. Other important composers such as Brahms, Schumann, and Liszt had been looking at Paganini for inspiration. Why was that? Paganini was well known for revolutionizing violin playing. His compositions were so difficult that initially he was the only one that could play them. One of his most celebrated original works were his 24 caprices for violin solo, the last being a theme and variations. A theme and variations composition usually begins with a full presentation of the main theme, followed by variations that are still closely related to that theme, but presents changes in their tempo, dynamics, keys, and character. Rachmaninoff decided to group the variations in a mini concerto and divide it in 3 large sections: a fast movement, variations 1 through 10, a slow movement, variations 12 through 18, and a virtuoso finale, 19 to the end. Please enjoy this exhilarating virtuoso piece played by our soloist, George Lee. Closing the program will be Dvořák's Symphony No. 9, composed in 1892. The Czech composer, Dvořák, lived in the United States from 1892 to 1895. Here, he was able to experience different aspects of the American culture that inspired him to write about his impressions and send greetings from the New World in his final symphony. But how did Dvořák manage to capture both the American and Czech spirit in one piece? Dvořák made use of syncopated rhythms and modal melodies from the folk and popular musical traditions from both Bohemia and the United States. Not only this, but Dvořák was very interested in African American and Native American music that ended up influencing his composition. It is clear the influence that hearing spirituals had on him. Listen for the English horn solo in the second movement, a famous melody that later had words fitted by William Arms Fisher to become Going Home. It is also thought that the flute solos in the first movement might have been inspired by Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. This is the reason why the themes from this symphony sound American to Americans and they sound Czech to Czechs. While you listen to this masterwork and enjoy all the wonderful solos from the North Carolina Symphony, look for the use of a motto theme that will appear in all 4 movements. The theme is first introduced by the horns in the first movement. Here is a sneak peek. We hope that you enjoy this performance and that Dvořák's Symphony takes all of us into a new world with a renewed sense of hope and energy for our 21-22 season. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of the works of Copland, Steele, Rachmaninoff, and Dvořák that you'll hear at this weekend's performances. We hope to see you all in the concert hall.